In this video, we're going to see how the process of working with strings in Java compares to that same process in Python. But first, I need to tell you about a new type in Java. It's called the char type, C-H-A-R, and it's used to represent individual characters in Java. It's a primitive type, which means it's not an object type. It's not a reference type. Chars have literals, and when we want to put a literal char in our program, we have to surround the character by single quotes. Now in Python we saw that we could use either single or double quotes for strings, and there is no separate notion of a char type in Python. In Java, when we use single quotes, we can only use them for single characters. If we try to have multiple characters in between single quotes, we will get an error. And it's important that if you actually do want a char, that you use single quotes and not double quotes. So if I take the letter A and surround it with double quotes, that's going to give me a string object in Java, whereas if I surround it with single quotes, I'm going to get a char value. And again, a char is a primitive, so this value here, this char value, is not an object, whereas this string literal does give me a string object with all of the methods that are inside strings. Okay, so you can think of a string in Java as being a collection of chars along with all of the methods that we can use to operate on strings. So now let's compare strings in Python with strings in Java. So here is a Python program, a really simple one. So here is the corresponding Java code fragment. So let's just look at some of the obvious ways in which it's different. We again need to have semicolons at the end of each statement. We need to declare our variables. So S1 and S2 are declared to be of type string. Numchars is going to hold an integer, so it's of type int. And then S3 is going to also hold a reference to a string object, so it's declared to be of type string. Other differences. Over here, we did choose to use double quotes for our string literals. We could have used single quotes, but in Java, it's mandatory if you want string literals to use double quotes. Okay, let's look in a little bit more detail here. If you notice, my variable name, this is just a style point that I want to make. In Python, if you have multiple words as part of the name of something, we typically put an underscore between the two words. So here I have the word num, which is short for number, and then the word chars, short for characters, and we put an underscore in between. In Java, we don't typically use underscores. Instead, we capitalize the beginning of each new word. So that's just a style convention. It's not required, but it's typically what we do in Java. Now, if you look at the len function, that's how we found out how many characters were in the string S1 when we were doing it in Python. But there is no comparable function in Java. Instead, there is a length method that is inside the string object, and so we call it using dot notation. So you have the variable that represents the string object, then you have the name of the method, and in this case the method takes no inputs, no parameters, so there's just empty parentheses. And this is referred to as a non-static method because it is inside the object. It belongs to the object. And soon we're going to see how we can write our own non-static methods as part of a new class that represents a new type of object. Okay, so that's a difference between Python and Java. There's also a difference in terms of how you're going to actually break up a string into smaller strings. So in Python there are special operators for slicing and indexing. So here you can see we're doing slicing. Here we're doing indexing to get a single character. So slicing gives us a substring, whereas indexing gives us just a single character. In Java, there are no special operators for those things. Instead, you again need to use non-static methods. The substring method takes two parameters, the start index and the end index, but the slice, similar to what we saw in Python, is not going to include the character at that end index. We're going to get everything up to but not including. And then if we want to get just a single character, we use the charat method. Again, that's inside the string, and you pass in the index. of the character that you want to extract. So again, substring allows us to get an arbitrary length substring. Char is always going to give us a single character. Now, you cannot use negative indices in Java the way you can in Python, right? So here we were using -1 to say that we wanted the last character in the string. There's no such thing in Java. So instead, you want to use the length of the string -1. And because numchars already held the length of the string, I can just say numchars -1. And then finally, it's worth noting that Python strings, because they're objects, also do have methods inside them, just like Java strings do. But the Java version of those methods is often named differently. So in Python, if I want to turn a string into all uppercase characters, the name of the method is upper. In Java, it's called toUpperCase. And so you want to get comfortable looking at the online documentation for the string class in Java, and it will help you to find the methods that you need. And you can find that just by Googling Java String API. And we'll talk more about that in lecture. All right, if we were to actually run through this, let's see what happens. So we start out with two different variables, S1 and S2. And again, they're holding references to the corresponding strings. We're then forming a new string here as part of this assignment statement. And that new string is the string hello world with a space in between. Notice the original string hasn't changed, but now we're going to make S1 point to that new string. And so the old string is now lost. Then we figure out the length of the string, and again, that method, because we're calling it on S1, because S1 is before the dot, it's going to return the number of characters in that string, which is 12, and we're storing it in the variable numchars. Then we're forming a new string. First, we're doing substring, and we're saying we want to go from position 0 up to but not including position 5, and so we're getting just the substring hello, and then char is giving us the single character at position 12 minus 1 or 11. That's the character that is the exclamation point, and so we're then going to concatenate that onto the end of the substring that we got, and then we're taking that new string object and we're making S2 point to it. And then finally, we're creating a new string from the string that S2 refers to by calling the toUpperCase method. That gives us back a new string in which all of the lowercase characters are uppercase, and we're making S3 point to that string. We're storing the reference to that string in the variable S3. And so at the end of this code fragment, S3 is this string, or more precisely, it holds a reference to this string.